Senator Booker.
You are here in my office.
I'm in your office.
I wish we were back in Jersey, man.
Well, with enough of the accoutrements in here, I feel in some ways like I am back.
This is sacred Jersey. We've declared this for the state of New Jersey.
Between the Jersey paraphernalia and the Star Wars books, I'm in Jersey nerd heaven, and I'm very much enjoying it.
Don't forget Mr. Spock up on my.
I see him waving. He's like the elf on the shelf.
Yes.
But with logic.
Yes.
Not magic.
Yes.
So I think that's a good way to go. Thank you for joining and sitting down with us. I want to explain a little bit about kind of why we're here and what we did. So the show is about race. And after George Floyd, there was a real sense in the country that, hey, is there a problem here? Did we do something to black people that would make them upset, or were there things? And white people realized in this moment that it was time to listen. And all the news organizations, it's time white people need to sit back and listen. And so what we did is we ran back from the time of George Floyd all the way back through Frederick Douglass. And basically, you'd be amazed at the consistency of what's been said, from James Baldwin to Chris Rock to Sister Souljah to people on the street, which is, this is a system designed for white people. And it always has been. And black people don't feel as much a part of it. They are separate from the way this country was designed and are not the people that it was designed to benefit. And that's been consistent from all the way through. So the premise was, maybe this isn't a conversation where black people need to teach white people, because they've been pretty consistent over time. Maybe we need to have a conversation with white people. Why has this fight been so hard? Why has there been so much resentment? Why is every gain met with resistance? Man, if you look at those pictures from Little Rock, boy, those are the same angry faces that you see from Boston during busing. So we did that. We had a conversation with some activists who are trying to have that conversation with white people, and Andrew Sullivan, who has obviously a different view. And the conversation with white people, I can tell you this, it did not go well.
Really?
Yeah. It got heated fast. So it brings me to the question, and we talked to Senator Scott. It seems that one of the greatest impediments to creating a more equitable society is two things that we sort of felt really strongly came out of it. One is, at heart, a lot of white people blame black people for the entrenched poverty of areas that were caused by what we would look at as systemic problems, like redlining and the Homestead Act.
Right.
And the GI Bill, where black people were excluded. But they look at it as, it's a community that can't get it together. And you see it on the news. It's when they cover Rust Belt poverty, and then the jobs left, and the drugs came, the opioids, and the despair. But when they cover it in the inner city, it's single parents and crack. And why can't these people get it together? So that's the first impediment. And the second impediment is resource guarding. Because what they feel is, I work hard and I play by the rules, and if you're just going to help them, that's coming out of my pocket. So I just wanted to give you the overview.
Right, the framing.
To give you.
Yeah.
And with all that being said, the question is this. How do you move forward with equity and equal opportunity when the still overwhelming majority of the country believes that that is entitlement, and that there hasn't been, that their lives are hard too? And if you're going to do that, that's coming out of their pocket. And do you agree that that's an issue?
I get, there's so many ways I want to start on this. I mean,
Please.
because you're asking me also as a practical lawmaker who's trying to get things done that are going to benefit our country and address a lot of these issues.
That's a great point, because there's two things. So I'd love to hear your position as an observer of the human condition, and then as a practitioner of the Senate, because those are two very separate things.
Right. And so look, yes. So I really want to get into the practical, but I want to start with the heart.
Please.
Because this idea that the bigotry that is evident in this country is somehow an American problem. No, bigotry is a human problem. And I can show you all around this country, all around this world, where you see those worst of human nature. What has been the investment of Americans, in particular Black Americans, if you read, Frederick Douglass's work, his hope for America as he encouraged Blacks to fight in the Civil War, as Blacks took up arms in every war to fight for this country, from Crispus Attucks, the first person to die, arguably in America, to men and women who are fighting now, is fighting for an idea and an ideal that this could be a nation that represents the best of humanity. The story of America, to me, is a story of people trying to make this a more perfect union where we are a multicultural democracy based around principles and ideals, and not race, not ethnicity, but the best of our spirit. And
so why would that be hard? I mean, it sounds like such a basic premise.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this. People don't understand how fragile democratic ideals are.
Right.
They really are, far more than people think, because there's base human nature that in many democracies around this country, this world, that fail because people fall to kleptocracies, they fall towards authoritarianism, they fall towards hatred, they fall to ethnic cleansing and ethnic conflict. We are trying to do this, and I think in some ways an example of people that are in this fight. We have a experiment that's now lasted a couple hundred years, and clearly we are getting better. I am sorry, the stories I grew up with from my parents are very different than what I'm experiencing. I mean, you sit with the older folk in my family, and they recognize clearly that progress is being made, though they are under no illusion that we have a long way to go. And for me, frankly, I have a column I wrote as a 22-year-old at Stanford after the Rodney King verdict, where I felt, literally the title of the column is "Why Have I Lost Control?" And I just went through all the experiences I had with police and I said a line in there, if I remember correctly, there's something like, all this continues unless somebody catches on, back then it was videotape, one piece of your reality.
Right.
And I read that after George Floyd, and it brought tears to my eyes.
Right.
Because you could change a couple things, and it could be written by a 22-year-old today.
Right.
And so, look, I don't think we get out of the trap that obviously, as you say, people are that tension, until we get a far more courageous empathy for one another in this country, until we show a capacity, and we haven't at certain times in our country, to truly understand that it's not you or me, it is really we. We are in this together, and your suffering is directly attached to how much my family and well-being will thrive.
Right.
And so what I mean by this is the best activists that I know of, James Bevel and Dorothea Cotton, who were really the two activists that convinced King in '63 to let children march before Bull Connor. It shocked the conscience of this country. And you saw this expansion of moral imagination and the ignition of a more courageous empathy, where people poured into that city and segregation fell, and it took a leap forward. So why is it that we have a hard time understanding that we've created these systems that are hurting us all? Between the time I was in law school to the time I was mayor of the city of Newark, we were building a prison or jail every 10 days. We took so much of our infrastructure money to warehouse human potential that cost us billions of dollars of our resources. and disproportionately poor, addicted, survivors of abuse, mentally ill, but by the way, disproportionately black and brown people.
Right.
And how do we not understand that that's not black people's problems for being over incarcerated? This is a cancer to the whole body of our country.
But they don't. And
Well,
so what,
when you say
what they'll
that-
say is, so there's always, I call them the butt people.
Right.
So black people are incarcerated at a level disproportionate to not only their role in the population, but to the crimes that they commit. They get stiffer sentences, they get arrested more for the same crimes that white people get off on. And if you say that, people will go, no, that's true. But
Right. So I have problems with language like they because
it's too generalized. It's reductive.
To sweep everybody.
I get that.
I try to tell my staff, don't write me a speech where I say the Republicans.
Right.
Because that's whipping up 60 million Americans, 70 million Americans. Right. So let's just be specific. Undeniably, blacks and whites do not use marijuana at different rates. And in fact,
right.
young white men have a slightly higher rate of dealing pot. But blacks are about 4 times more likely to be arrested of it. And if you don't think this is a big problem, in 2019, the last year I have data for, there were more marijuana-related arrests than all the violent crime arrests combined.
Right.
And disproportionately people of color. I went on college campuses where you smell pot in a lot of places. And nobody's raiding those places.
Didn't they know a senator was coming by? Doesn't anybody tell them that you're in the building? Or are they all just like, it's okay. It'll be fine.
He's got a big marijuana
it's Senator Booker. It'll be fine. He's
got a big marijuana. He's with us.
It doesn't matter.
So look, so what does that mean?
Right.
If I got arrested for possession of marijuana, I could get a lawyer. I live in a community, low-income, majority black and brown community, that one arrest devastates the whole family. You don't even have to serve, you don't even have to get convicted. You're away from your job, you're losing your job, you're not making rent. It tumbles people out. And so for that to be heaped upon disproportionately, it's wrong for any young kid, poor black, poor white, anybody. But to not recognize the factual reality that this is an unjust system that is implicating all of us and having a direct effect on all of us, because a person who has one marijuana conviction for doing things 2 of the last 4 presidents admitted to doing, now has what the American Bar Association says
in the system.
What's that?
They're in the system.
More than that, you're now out. 40,000, according to the American Bar Association, what they call collateral consequences. Can't get a job, can't get a loan from a bank. The marijuana war alone, the prohibition, what has done to the economic potential of disproportionately the black community, but our economy isn't separated. It has hurt the economic growth of our country. It's a self-inflicted wound.
Right.
And the lack of empathy there, it is hurting those folks who are facing direct oppression, but it's also affecting your well-being as well. And that's the rub.
So how do you make that argument? Because, it makes a good point. So you kind of have 2 things going here, which is one is a moral argument, one is a practical argument. A lot of people, I'm not going to say white people, but a lot of people don't recognize that disparity as purposeful in the execution of the laws of the state. What you're describing and the system you're describing isn't happenstance. It's not something that just came upon this community. It's the design of the system to keep a community without power and without wealth.
So I don't want to quibble with some of your words.
Yes. Quibble away, though. I'm here to be quibbled with.
But the language, the reason why your language makes me feel uncomfortable is because it makes it sound like there is some sinister person who's designing a system today to hurt someone else.
It's not today. Well, okay, let's back up. Do you think that the legal system had in mind penalizing black people that had been gaining rights and power?
I can show you legislative debates after the Civil War where they said, let's create felony disenfranchisement. And
kind of my point.
Yes, so we can make sure black people don't vote by arresting them for breaking the codes of our community.
Correct.
So I understand that there was a nefarious design. how did cities like Newark have such a high concentration
Right.
of public housing? Then all studies will show a low-income person growing up in more economically diverse environments does extraordinarily more, but those towns did not want, or surrounding suburbs did not want.
Sure.
It was designed, we do not want these people living in our community. FHA loan policies, so many things. Redlining, we can go through all of that. What I'm saying to you is if we are going to solve this trap, the language we use, to me at least, is very important. And if somehow we have to shift, we need to tell the truth, but somehow it can't be a conversation about blame, but more that inspires a sense of responsibility.
So that's really interesting. So in the conversation we were having, the pushback was that, one of our guests used the phrase white supremacy, that the country was designed in white supremacy. And that language was a burr in the saddle of this one individual who said, how dare you say white supremacy, even though to my mind, I don't know how you would describe it any other way. In terms of the design of it, it was designed with this idea that it was a hierarchy, that white Anglo-Saxon men were the top of it. Jews, Italians, Irish were kind of in that middle zone that could be promoted depending on the need.
Right.
And brown and black people, it was purposefully designed to keep them within that status, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's, I don't know how else you describe it, but that word, we couldn't get past it.
Right.
Right? We couldn't get past that idea. So how do you get to the practical? How do you remove it from the morality of it?
Right.
To the effectiveness of it, and why should you censor yourself for the comfort of those who don't recognize the reality of how that system was created?
Right, but I don't care if you're talking about LGBTQ issues or gender issues. Nobody should be policing a activist that their responsibility is to make someone feel comfortable.
Right.
I think there's great leaders in the past said that my job is to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Right.
And to find ways, again, to prick your consciousness to expand, again, that ideal of empathy. We all have to look at, we share a responsibility, and all of us have to do strategies that we believe are going to advance the cause. So for me, very simply, I think there is a real poverty in this country of empathy and love for thy neighbor. And the folks that most inspire me throughout history have been found ways that they didn't beat Bull Connor because they called him a white supremacist. They didn't beat Bull Connor because they brought bigger dogs and bigger fire hoses. They beat Bull Connor because a whole bunch of people who were comfortable on their couches got so disturbed that they ended up joining the effort. Most big bills that have happened in Washington, D.C. did not happen. We didn't get the women's right to vote because a bunch of men came to the Senate floor and said, hey fellas, huddle up here. It's about time we give women the right to vote. We got it because ordinary Americans, the Rainbow Coalition of Americans, decided to do creative protest to ignite, to advance the ethics of our society.
But isn't shame a part of that? Isn't the weapon that made that, isn't the reason that protest against Bull Connor was effective, is that people felt shame in being connected to the majority culture that was perpetrating this.
And so I don't want to dismiss, you were very dismissive of the post-George Floyd period.
Yes.
I'm telling you that when I opened my laptop and looked at the best-selling list for the New York Times, for Amazon, whatever, and I saw all of these books unpacking the systematic, we've gone through the Homestead Act, Social Security, all these things that had a disproportionate impact. I suddenly saw people that I've known for years who didn't know what Juneteenth was, didn't know about the bombing of Black Wall Street, didn't know the numbers of lynching that went on. And so, I'm sorry, you can't, as much as you may feel that wasn't substantive, I believe it was. I encounter a lot more people who are asking this question.
Right.
Not is there a problem, but what can I do? How can I be a part of advancing these issues of justice in our country?
Right.
And so I think there's not just the problem of expanding consciousness, because thank God we're all not gonna think alike on these issues.
Right.
But there are a whole bunch of good people of all different backgrounds who recognize that our criminal justice system is not just. Or as Brian Stevenson says, you have a criminal justice system that clearly treats you better if you're rich and guilty than poor and innocent.
Right.
Okay, that's not news to anybody.
Right.
But they don't know how to fix it, and they often are overwhelmed, or they surrender to cynicism that I can't make change, that the system can't be changed. That's a whole bunch of folk that could be a part of concrete solutions that we can get something done.
But within that paradigm, would you say that the education of a populace that was unaware of those systemic issues is louder than the backlash and resentment? I mean, the President of the United States said over and over again, more fund the police, give more money, more.
Right.
I want more.
Right.
There was a turn. There was this, some of it performative of the black square and the thing, and then all of a sudden it flipped, and all the parole initiatives went out the window, all the thoughts about not necessarily defunding the police, but even creating an effective force that made them not have to also be social workers and not have to also be mental health professionals, and all those things.
Now you're shifting a little bit into politics. So I am not. I see it regularly down here. Like suddenly, a few weeks ago, everybody wants to talk about crack pipes, and the government's giving away crack pipes.
Right.
And this was a manufactured way to try to put momentum behind reactionary politics and demonize some folk. And I'm not going to succumb to that. Some people suddenly get very defensive. I'm going to tell you right now, I want to follow the evidence. Needle exchange programs, safe injection sites, lower crime, stop addiction. I don't care what people say. Hey, Booker wants to, give people safe spaces to inject drugs.
Right.
I know that the evidence says, and I'm willing to stand up and fight for those policies.
Right.
So I understand that the political whiplash of down here is big. And I'm going to get to the policies that I think can get done and over a lot of the hurdles that are there. But there is a spiritual component that I have to return.
Empathy.
That is written into our founding documents. Read the Declaration of Independence. It's full of Native Americans called savages. These founding documents, blacks are fractions of human beings. God, they don't even mention women, it's men.
Right.
I understand all of that, but there was a genius in these documents that has inspired black Americans since the founding of this country to dream a bigger dream. Every leader from Frederick Douglass to Martin Luther King called to the documents of our founding as a way of calling to the conscience of a larger country. The end of the Declaration of Independence is all about empathy. It says we must mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, or else this whole thing is not going to work.
Right.
So where has that fallen apart? Where now I am so angry, where we have a nation now where there's so much contempt for each other.
Right.
That's the cancer. That makes it so hard for us to see the suffering of our neighbor and understand that's my suffering too. As a great, black female poet once said, we are each other's business. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's magnitude and bond. And so I'm sorry, there is politics, but there is a time, this is a time for poetry as well. We need more poets to awaken that larger vision. If we can't get that right, the poets that wrote these founding documents, that call to our founding songs, the words of the greatest heroes I have, black and white, who seem to have a vision that we are one people. If we lose that, the politics is never going to be possible. And so I'm not one of those folks that wants to stop the moral outrage that people have at our prison system and our healthcare system, at all these things that are just wrong. But I literally wrote a book called United, trying to help to have us at the end of the day A democracy works when the majority of the people come together and call for change and moving in a different direction or further in a direction. And so the
But
challenge.
why is it incumbent upon the disenfranchised to have that grace?
It's not, John. It's incumbent upon you and others.
Right.
You're sitting here having this conversation as a white Jewish guy because you understand,
Right.
That it is incumbent upon you.
Well,
Why did Goodman and Cheney and Schwerner die together?
the reason that I'm having the conversation is I felt as though throughout the history of our country, it's always been incumbent upon the black community to turn the other cheek or to show grace in the face of a repealing of their humanity. And so the idea was to try and get to the heart of not the racial divide, but racial resentment. What is it about the white community that has in their hearts, some in the white community, there is this lack of that empathy,
Right.
that they see something as alien or that its place was lower, and how do you overcome design?
So those are two different questions, but
Yes.
I'm just trying to impress upon you.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a narrow band of people who harbor racial resentment.
No, I'm talking about the majority of people. They don't harbor racial resentment, but if you dig down deep enough, there's a but there. There is I'm talking about liberals, man. I'm talking about moderates.
And so
I'm not talking about guys who put the Confederate flag on and drive around down south.
So good. Let's put, first of all, the geography you've already said is to castigate the South.
You're right.
Yes.
I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to be good.
Trying to help you.
I don't mean it that way.
Because I know you. I know your heart.
But what I mean it is this. There is a sense that the poverty and difficulties that black community face is a function of their own design. And it's like this when you say, if you dig down deep on a lot of people, they'll say, well, there's more crime there, or there's more single parenting in the black community. And if you keep saying to them, but why? But why? They won't come to, well, redlining and the Homestead Act.
Yes.
What they'll come to is the culture.
Well, I'm not sure I actually agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you about implicit racial bias. We just saw an incident in New Jersey where two people were fighting in a mall, two kids were fighting in a mall.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And so that's implicit racial bias. One is seen as a threat.
But isn't that what we're talking about?
No.
Okay.
So let me because that's a real.
Okay.
And it is an issue. It is an issue of why in my life, both Tim Scott and our lives, we were pulled over disproportionately to our white friends. That's different than harboring racial contempt. I have implicit biases.
I'm not talking about racial contempt, honestly.
Okay, so we all have implicit biases. I have implicit gender biases, LGBTQ, but we all do. It is very important that we understand, especially in policing, it can become dangerous.
Right.
But I want to just take a step because you're missing, I think, for me, what animates and drives me, and maybe it's very personal.
Right.
I am literally sitting here right now because a white guy on a couch in Jersey was watching TV on March 7th, 1965, comfortable on his couch, not doing anything about the civil rights movement, and sees a bunch of marchers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge get viciously beaten. And it was his moment of calling, am I going to sit on the couch comfortably or am I going to stand up? First, he wanted to go down to Birmingham. He decided, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to Alabama. Couldn't afford a plane ticket. Here's a guy, white guy, struggling to make it, struggling to run his business. He decides, I'm just going to do something, the best I can with what I have where I am at. He starts giving an hour pro bono work a week to this group in the northern New Jersey called the Fair Housing Council. A bunch of whites, blacks, Christians, Jews coming together, try to deal with housing segregation in New Jersey. 4 years later, he represents his family, gets a case file with his family, the Bookers, trying to be the first family to integrate an all-white town.
Right.
And my parents kept getting turned away time and time again. And this guy designed a sting operation where white couples would follow them and find out the house was still for sale. I bring that point up because that guy doesn't harbor racial animus. And the problem, as King wrote in the letters of the Birmingham jail, I don't answer my critics, but I'm answering these well-meaning, liberal, clergy members.
Right.
Because I actually see you as more of a problem
Right.
than I see these folks who are running around with overtly racist ideals.
Right.
It
We're
is
we're
good people
comfortable
who do,
in our segregation.
who if you had a conversation with them, they understand that, again, going through it, that it is wrong that black women die at 4 times the rate in childbirth that white women, even when you control for education and income.
Right.
That is wrong, and they know that that's racial bias.
Right.
But the question is what are you doing about it? Because if it was your wife that died in childbirth unnecessarily, all of us know it would be a driving cause. That's the empathy gap.
Right.
Is when your injustice, I own it as my injustice. And we've seen the best, we are where we are today because people of multiple races realized that I may not be a man, I may not be gay, I may not be black, but your cause is my cause, and I will march for it. I'll be beaten for it. Goodman, Cheney, Schwerner, who I mentioned before, will die together for it. That is the best of America. That's the country I love and believe in, is when we all have that.
Do you think those examples you gave are examples of valor and extraordinary behavior? Or do you feel like, because when I hear you say that, it people will say, how can the systems of racism still even have traces? I like to say, like, maybe we don't have racism anymore, but we're still testing positive. The antibodies of the systems that we built up. Everything to me is the pandemic.
Every day there are millions of acts of kindness, decency, and love going on that will never make the music, because that doesn't sell.
Right.
It doesn't sell. Van Jones and Newt Gingrich were on Crossfire. Brene Brown says something beautiful. You can't hate up close, so pull people in.
Right.
And they said they found out they had things in common. So they went to the producers and said, give us a segment at the end called Ceasefire. And they said, okay, guess what?
Right.
After a handful of shows, they pulled it down because the ratings were going down. I'm sorry.
Someone should get that show canceled. But let me tell you that. So this brings us to.
So outrage sells.
Yes, but let's.
But the goodness and the decency that goes on every day. I live in Newark. I see it. Why are a bunch of Jews from Weequahic High School, who graduated 50 years ago, still involved in a school that now is all black, and helping kids with everything from scholarships to uniforms and instruments?
Right.
I can give you just in my own.
So let's go to
community.
the practical then, because I think this gets to a point. The reason why I wanted to come to the Senate and Senator Scott and you,
right,
is I look at the House of Representatives as how far we've come. It's much more reflective of the reality of the diversity of our population, whether it be LGBT or Q or diversity of religion or of color or of gender. The House of Representatives feels like the movement towards the country we're trying to be. The Senate feels like a legacy of power and systems in place. In 1870, there were 2 black senators. Now there's 3. And one of them we're not so sure about if he's staying with it in Georgia. So, the Senate is affirmative action for old white dudes. But let me get to the point.
Yes, please.
So it's Senator Scott and Senator Booker. 2 extraordinary stories, maybe of kindness that we don't hear enough about. But clearly, there's a lot in common in your stories. And if you look at the prescriptions for what to do about the racial problem, there's a lot of commonality of policy as well. Both of your offices wouldn't have this interview with the other one present.
Right. Which there's some wisdom in that.
Why is that?
Because at the end of the day, I want Tim to continue to be a great partner of mine. And it is too easy for media that wants to focus on the conflict between the two of us.
But that's not. This wasn't about conflict. One of the reasons was we found so much in common, and I was surprised at how well you aligned with each other, and we thought, what a great way to show
Right.
these two gentlemen on the opposite side of the political spectrum, one considered very conservative, one considered very liberal, and yet with an understanding
profoundly pragmatic
of history and grace,
yes.
and profoundly pragmatic, and we could not permeate the political divide to get the two of you even in the same room.
So two things. One is Tim and I have done public events together. I've done media sit downs next to folks of a lot of different of the other party.
I see.
I don't want you to isolate that as like this particular moment.
You don't think it's a meaningful.
I don't think it is indicative of the fact that Tim and I, we talk about, we both want to go on the road and talk about
What?
Seriously. We've talked a lot
like a
about
vaudeville thing?
No, we don't have that in it. We don't have that gene like you do to make people laugh. But we've talked about the power in what we have in common and speaking to audiences, especially in the Black community. Look, Tim has been my best partner.
Right. But then why not demonstrate that?
But
or is it something that you felt like you guys couldn't demonstrate with me?
No. So this is the point. I think that you need to understand where my pragmatism shifts in.
Okay.
I'm not looking for media plaudits about our partnership. I want to achieve things.
Right.
And so for me to have done getting more resources for HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, getting more resources for sickle cell. I almost laughed when I said, you know why? Because here's a disorder that affects blood disorder that affects so many people. It was getting dramatically less funding than other disorders because it disproportionately affects Black people.
Right.
He and I have worked together on
in Senator Scott's office. There's a picture of a young man with sickle cell. I mean, it's one of the portraits that he has on. I guess that's.
And when you walk into my office, by the way, you have a picture of me and Tim Scott giving each other a fist bump.
But it struck me as so like, oh my God.
No, don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to the fact that he and I talk all the time about what we can get over the line.
And here's what else is interesting. The two of you both have, I think, a really powerful argument about not being race-centric. Now, I don't necessarily know like how you do that, but it's interesting how both of your philosophies, so we talked to Senator Scott, and a lot of what he said is, well, I'm not as focused on the white and black as you are. And I kept thinking to myself, like, wow, what kind of a shithead am I? like you guys have the grace and the pragmatism to move past it. And here I am thinking, so it's sort of that idea of, when I think about the prescription of this, is it a Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Is it a reckoning of the country?
So don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Please don't misunderstand me.
No. Okay.
Because I think it's very important that we name the injustices unflinchingly and as directly as possible. I keep this map up in my office because I got elected, I got into politics by a community that was overwhelmingly minority.
Okay.
And as the elder tenant president of the projects I lived in said to me, don't forget who brought you to politics. Don't forget why.
Right.
Purpose is more important than popularity or politics. Never lose your purpose. So I'm very clear that we are in a nation that is still trying to address the original sins that are evident in systems right now. And I don't need to go far when I see my children in my city disproportionately impacted by lead poisoning. One of the top indicators, if not the top indicator, of whether your children will be poisoned is the color of your skin in this country. Because from the particulate matter that causes asthma to the toxins in soil to the contaminants in water, those are disproportionately in low-income places. And low-income places, urban areas, disproportionately African-American or
So
Latino.
are we too focused on the equality of it all and not the equity of it all? And maybe is that, have communities of color had to fight so hard for equality that they haven't had the opportunity to generate wealth and equity that other communities have? And should the focus then be on that?
I'm not policing your language, but...
No, police it, please, because that's,
But
you know,
to think
I'm not...
in an integrated interconnected,
Yeah.
interwoven society that poverty in some places isn't affecting. And I know we're stratification of wealth, and which is getting worse and worse across all racial lines. But somehow we've lost, and by the way, the measures we use, GDP, and have nothing to do about human well-being and human flourishing.
Right.
They may be related, but the goal has got to be to live in a nation where our life expectancy isn't going down, where deaths of despair are accelerating from overdoses to suicides.
But isn't taking care of that racial wealth gap, and if that's the
Isn't
wrong word,
addressing the racial issues, systemic racial issues,
Right.
a part of that? Yes.
Right.
That's my point.
Wait, that's my point.
No, I'm stealing your point then.
Son of a gun.
My point is the urgency to deal with all of these issues is for the health of this country as a whole.
Correct.
And so my focus often is, as a pragmatic politician,
Now we're getting, okay, great.
is to move legislation that actually can get something done. Let me give you an example.
Yes.
Biden gets elected. I tell him that the USDA has been horrible to black farmers.
Right.
At the turn of the century, black farmers at the end of the Civil War had owned land proportionate to their population.
Right.
And these outrageously, overtly racist policies by the USDA
Yes.
pushed blacks off of their land, cheated them of their land in horrific ways. And so he came in, I said, hey, look, we got a crisis. Very few black farmers are existing. Do something about it. He did something about it. It was my legislation.
And my point is,
Hold
what
on.
happened to that legislation?
It got stopped
That's my point.
because we have a Supreme Court and that we knew it
It
took
got stopped because
of legal
white
challenges.
resentment. White farmers felt like
No. At first,
resources were being taken away from them and given to people.
because
who
some
didn't-
people, again, when you say white farmers, if I'm a white farmer listening to this in Iowa, I'm thinking to myself, Jon Stewart's calling me, Jon Stewart's is blaming me for stopping Booker's legislation. That's not true.
But-
some people stopped that legislation.
Right.
And my job, who wants to help black farmers who've been
Right.
built off of their land, is to go back to work with the Biden administration, write new legislation that could withstand a legal challenge.
But the legal challenge is coming from a place not just of legality, it's coming from a place of resentment that their lives are hard too, and why should these folks be given a government?
I don't know if it's coming that or some ideologue that says we should have race neutral and all. I don't know who's coming from it. I'm not pointing fingers.
So great. So let's get to this point then. If we want to build that equity, if we want to move from the moral argument, because I think you're right, when you start framing it in strictly moral terms, people feel attacked at their core value. If I'm against this and you're saying I'm a racist and that's abhorrent, and I will react defensively and angrily. So how do we convince people that what you're talking about, that fixing the inequities that exist in our society, structurally and otherwise, is a net win in terms of efficiency and in terms of it will raise this country up economically in a much more profound way.
So
How
first
do
of
you
all,
make that turn?
It's not all on me.
Senator Scott didn't help.
It's not all on me. It's on each of us. Each of us, John, has to take
Yes.
responsibility and do the best, like the guy on the couch, do the best we can with what we have where we are.
Right.
Artists have to produce the documentaries that expand people's consciousness and drive people to change. Business people have to recognize, as I've had in the last week, 2 partners in law firms say to me, I got a problem. I don't have enough African-American lawyers. What can I do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody where they are has to start thinking, what can I do? I'm a person, though, that goes home to a generally low-income black and brown community, and I want to make sure that when I go back to all of New Jersey, I say I've delivered change. So what I do, I fight for the child tax credit. Me, Senators Brown, Senators Bennett, call the Biden team when they come in and say, hey, this is why this is important. Biggest middle-class tax cut. By the way, it's going to cut American poverty in half. And by the way,
And did it.
and it will have a disproportionate impact on black and brown people.
Right.
Right. So
And then they went, you know what? That's working really well to cut poverty.
Yes,
And that was one of those things you were like, this is cut child poverty by 50%, and everybody's like, yeah, we got to stop that.
But I'm telling you,
that's gone.
But I'm saying to you again, that's the ups and downs. If you told me I would get,
man, I can't tell you how impressed I am with your ability to remain tenacious,
to get my
and
butt
hopeful.
kicked time and time
no,
again.
No, sir. This is not. Don't frame it negatively, because it's a spiritual thing that I don't know that I could. I've had a very small measure of experience with it, with certain legislative fights that kick the shit out of me emotionally. But I feel hopeful. This is making me realize, it's incremental, and it's not about that larger position of, it's that long arc of the moral universe bending toward justice. But
I'm sorry,
you're doing
your
it
family
nicely.
and my family, and most American families,
yes,
if they really stopped, American history, they would see, is a perpetual testimony to the achievement of impossible things. My grandmother was here when Barack Obama, 90 plus years old. Did you ever think you'd live to see a black president inaugurated? She said, heck no.
Right.
But that's symbolic, not substance, in terms of real change for great amounts of people.
It's an extraordinary achievement, but you want to make sure that the infrastructure underneath it is strong.
Yeah, so let me give you a better example. When we passed the First Step Act, which was a criminal justice reform act, that people told me, looked me in my face, said couldn't get done when I first got here. It took us 5+ years of my experience in the Senate to get this bill done. We did something that affected crack powder cocaine and made it retroactively. Either way, I'm back in Jersey, and I meet a man who was out of prison. And in fact, 90+% of the people that got out of prison of that one change, voted for by 87 senators, 88 if one of them wasn't absent, voted for this that had an impact on African Americans, correcting an injustice that this law liberated. Of the thousands of people, over 90% were black. Now, I'm sorry, if I had surrendered to cynicism or discouragement, or didn't work with people that others vilify, on my side of the aisle, vilify, if we didn't go to the hard work of getting that done, it wouldn't have been achieved. And by the way, talking to this guy, hell yeah, when he was in prison, he would have said to me, I don't care how many times you fail, get back up and get back in there and fight for it. So I don't understand, it's this ahistoric understanding. I'll get angry, I don't protest, all those things are well in the vein of American progress, but never stop believing that this is a country that can heal, that can grow, that can get better. And that one day, like my grandma, you and I will be in our 90s, should we make it that much, and we will be witnessing things in this country we never believed could be possible.
Yes, but some of those may not be the things that we also have. There's a fragility here as well that we also have to be mindful of. That the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, but we always have to remember there is someone trying to bend it back, and you have to be realistic about the fact that there are forces that are purposeful, and they are trying to bend it back, and they are trying to create, as we see, autocracy and more authoritarian and less just and more. Look, when you look at the Senate, man, the distribution of power in the Senate is affirmative action. I mean, it is, how can it not be? It is disproportionate to white rural America in terms of the power, and it's socialism. They've socialized power. They've distributed equally to every state when, hey man, this is about people. You're a state, compete with us. You want to have more power, get more people.
Right.
So within that system,
and I want to just go further. There are structures.
Yes.
In our democracy.
This is our point.
That bake inequality or anti-democratic realities, like the Electoral College.
Look who's on Team Stewart all the time. Look who's walked across the street and signed up with Team Stewart. Get the man a jersey. Get the man a jersey.
will never be one of those people that does not tell the truth about the situation.
Yes.
But it's not going to make me do anything but try harder to fix it.
If you had,
And let me give you an example of this.
yeah, please.
We're in Washington, D.C.
What?
It's got more people than a couple states. Pays more taxes per capita than a whole bunch of states.
Taxation without representation is an abomination.
Thank you.
And where's the harbor? I'm going to throw some. Do we have a harbor?
So what's stopping this from being a state? Well, we've gone back and looked at the history of a lot of states becoming states. They're often very political processes, often raw power grabs by people. This is an issue of justice. DC should be a state, and it's actually possible. We could have done it before. We could have done it under Obama if we were willing to change some of the Senate rules that are not written in the Constitution. My point is, there are ways to rectify injustice, but surrendering from the political system and saying, implicating it itself, as opposed to using that system to make the change, that's the rub. I inherently believe in America. I do. I'm willing to fight and die for this country, not because I think it's perfect, not because it doesn't break your heart. I'm sorry, if America hasn't broken your heart, you don't love her enough. So I'm not going to not criticize it. James Baldwin, my favorite writer, says, I love America more than any country. That's why I reserve the right to criticize it perpetually. My mom criticized me the most, and she loves me the most. So I love this country. I want to fight for it. I believe in her greatest ideals. It's not making me blind towards the compromises that happened to enshrine slavery, the designs that were done to protect certain power centers. I'm not ignoring all that history. I want everybody to know their history. I don't want to whitewash or Disneyify American history.
We're going to have to edit that because I think that's CRT. Is that CRT? Yeah, I'm going to have to edit that out, unfortunately, because I don't think Apple will air critical race theory.
I think we are strong enough in this country to know the truth and the bitter history of from Native Americans to Chinese Americans, but that doesn't make us less of a great nation. I think it makes us more.
Of course.
To tell the truth of what we've had to overcome to get here.
And why is it so hard then to convince Americans that that's the right way to deal with our history, that that's the right way
to progress? You are me when I first ran for office. I would knock on 9 doors and people would say, I'm going to vote for you. I get to a 10th door and the guy says, I don't like you. Not going to vote. I would stand there and argue with them for 30 minutes trying to get them. And my staff would be like,
on the negative.
What are you doing? You could have hit another 9 doors. Yeah. John, you don't have to.
See, this is, now I say, welcome to being a Jew, because that's how we operate. People always say to me, they go, you're such a both sides, you suffer from both sides or isn't? I'm like, I suffer from Judaism. It's on this end and on this end.
Well, B'ezrat Hashem, you will get over that. And
look at you.
Secondly, look, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You can focus on the people.
That's very smart.
Yes, you can focus on the people, that the issue for them is not understanding these principles or believing in these ideals. The issue is that they don't know what to do about the situation, or feel helpless, or are busy with their lives and don't understand that sometimes it's just a collective small acts that it takes to make big change.
In your mind's eye, if you were looking at an area of profound change, would education be that? If you were looking at rectifying that wealth gap for whatever community it may be,
I think it is.
Is that where the power source would be?
It's hard to say that, to have President Biden get all the lead pipes out of the ground. I'm sorry, if your kid is addled with lead, it's permanent brain damage. So it's hard to say just give that kid some more money.
You can't separate education from poverty or from environmental hazard it's sort of together.
What is that? Archimedes said, give me the right lever, I can move the world. I don't know if there's one
I'll
lever.
be honest with you, the one thing after this interview I meant to start doing is reading.
Because
I am so behind right now.
I disagree.
Author after author after. I was just about to say to you, have you seen Peacemaker yet on HBO Max? Because John Cena is...
First of all, I have seen Peacemaker, all episodes.
All right.
Second of all, you're a BS artist because you cannot be funny if you're not smart.
All right.
You have to. The best comedians are
very kind.
Yes, that's the truth. So
how do you deal with that totality then?
Again,
It's incremental in your mind.
No, it's picking issues that make a big difference. Look, children at the end of the day, I'm sorry, I think this is why Mary Wright Edelman, who used to be head of the Children's Defense Fund, was one of my greatest heroes, because it is hard to fight against the innocence of a child. That child has infinite potential, that if we give them the right start, and that starts with, why is America one of the worst nations for infant mortality and maternal mortality and stillbirth babies? It makes no economic sense, because it costs us more than giving women prenatal care and making sure they have healthy births. That's one. Number two, stay with the children. We know that kids in poverty, it is literally violence, because their brains don't develop. In fact, from this child tax credit, we now see the evidence that their brains actually were functioning faster and better if they didn't have the constant stress, the constant cortisol of poverty. So let's make a commitment. It's a policy decision. There won't be a child in poverty. We're going to lift them up with something as simple like the child tax credit. But let's not go there. Let's make sure we have quality childcare for every family. Right now, in half of our states, childcare, quality childcare costs more than tuition at the local college.
Right.
So let's just make sure we focus on kids, making sure they're healthy, they have access to nutritious foods.
So what can people do then to fight? Because what you lay out is, I have to say, like, almost identical to what Senator Scott lays out. Like, your platforms of raising this up are really close together. You might have differences in semantics or certain things, but in general, your diagnostic abilities really align. And even your policy prescriptions are not that far off. So how do we get people to help fight the headwinds of what seem like really not, I don't want to say simple, because obviously there's a complexity to all of this, but obvious.
Right. So
obvious solutions to intractable problems.
I had a bunch of students. I spoke to USC students recently, reminded them that I
safety school. Go ahead.
I scored a touchdown against USC. I advised them that all the time. Somehow I stumbled into their end zone. And they asked me, what should I do?
Right.
And I said, why is a middle-aged guy going to give you advice on what to do when every great social movement in this country, from suffrage movement to the civil rights movement, was driven by young people who had imagination and creative protests? The first hunger strike in this country in fact, the first protest in front of the White House was Alice Paul, who went on a hunger strike when she was put in prison. I mean, she was a creative protester, young person. So I'm not going to prescribe to other people, but I tell you what.
But I understand why they would ask you that, because your experience in these halls, like, these halls are a great metaphor for bringing change. But they're confusing, and it's a labyrinth, and it's hard to navigate. And I could see why they would want.
So I don't mind talking to people about how does a bill become a law, and I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. But all I can do is try to be the best version of myself. The worst version of me, I'll be honest, according to not living across my values, is when I fall into caustic contempt, when I'm dragged down so low that I'm hating somebody else for their views and their beliefs. Contempt didn't get me and Tim Scott to pass the First Step Act, to pass opportunities. I can go through the legislation. Not hating somebody, seeing their humanity, not otherizing them, recognizing that we have a lot in common. Feeling a call to patriotism. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. Patriotism is love of country. You cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. You don't always have to like them. You don't always have to agree with them. But love is this radical idea that I am going to put your well-being in line with mine and understand that they are actually bound together. For me, that has opened up a world of possibility, not just here in the Senate, which I've had a very productive career, passed legislation big legislation under Donald Trump, as well as Democratic presidents. But more importantly, it's opened up the capacity to have dialogue with people all over this country that unfortunately is happening not as much as it should, where we are walling ourselves off from each other and dismissing each other's humanity and common dignity. And that's not just us, it's those people that you talk about in the South that might
Hey,
have
man, there's a hardening
have a Confederate
everywhere.
flag.
There's a hardening everywhere of don't engage, don't address, because there is an irredeemable element.
Yes.
I think we've gotten to a point where there's a feeling of, and I'm not suggesting, I think knowing the difference between, all right, this is a horrible example, and you will be upset with my language and everything else. I live in Jersey.
Yes.
I happen to live in a redder part than the one that you represent.
I know where I live.
Yes. There is in the part of New Jersey where I live, Donald Trump controls the seas.
Okay.
He has an armada. There are flags on the ships.
Yes.
My wife and I play a little game. It's called Insurrectionist or Supporter. And we drive by and we try and figure out who's a supporter and who's in the rotunda with their pants down, smearing feces on the wall. I will never not think that that's an important distinction. And I will never not think that you are not safer or smarter if you can't look at groups and see, you remember when 9/11 happened, there was a real rush to create a monolith of the Muslim community, that
Yes.
they were, and we're going to shut down this country and we're going to do this. It doesn't make you safer to not know the difference between an Islamic extremist and a jihadist and a takfiri and a Shia and a Sunni. I think we've lost some of that in this country as well.
And this is why I'm going to call you out right now.
Please. Is it the game I play?
No. I believe in humor and laughter. I watched my dad come home from first black salesman for IBM in this entire area, and just to unwind, he'd put Richard Pryor on and laugh himself.
I do the same.
Yeah. So I just want to call you out for this.
Please.
I'm against the death penalty, and I'm horrified that my nation could have an 18, 19-year-old do something horrific and say that we should put them to death when they're 50 or 60. Sometimes these legal processes go on. Because I believe ultimately, I'm not saying that they should get out of it, I believe in life imprisonment, but we are a nation that doesn't believe in restorative justice. We believe in, often our system shows us that it's just punitive punishment, that we do not believe that people can be redeemed.
You want me to open my heart even to those that I put in the most extreme category.
Why can you and I have sympathy for the 18-year-old, 20-year-old that did something really dumb and really awful, violent crime? You and I know how you're wired, would say it's outrageous to put that person in jail for 75 years for a screw up when they're 20. Why is it that somebody who stormed this Capitol, then who was 20 years old, who came here whipped up in fervor and frenzy, beyond that same?
I'm not even.
I'm not saying they should escape.
But I'm even gonna go further and say I'm gonna separate out the people that got swept up in it to the guys who came here in camouflage with vests, knowing what they were going to do. Like, I'm even separating them out. But you're saying even those dudes in vests, like, I've got to find a way to go, like, I can get to them still.
I want every single person to be held accountable for their actions.
Yeah, but you're going to want me to open my heart, aren't you?
I desperately want you to open your heart. I really do, because.
But it's so late.
John.
I'm a 60-year-old man.
No, listen.
I don't even know what's in there.
If we cannot, grace by definition is unmerited.
No, listen, you're right.
Yes.
You're right.
Right.
I would like to argue with you, but you are right. It's just
one of my greatest heroes. It became my colleague, a guy named John Lewis. I went to go on a road trip with him to go visit Jimmy Carter and watch him teach Sunday school.
Oh my God!
I mean, this was like,
why isn't this a movie?
It's to go on a 2-hour drive with him to visit. I mean, it was really one of the more meaningful moments of my life, and I took advantage of it. I was like a football fan with his greatest hero, and I just was peppering him with questions. The guy, I was probably exhausting him on this trip, but the guy brought tears to my eyes when he told me a story about the man who beat him, who cracked his skull open, comes to his office with, I don't know if it's a child or grandchild, and says, "Will you forgive me?"
Yeah.
And John Lewis tells me he said yes, and the two men hugged and wept. So I'm sorry. If we can't find a way in this country to love those who I don't care what side of the equation you're on, who others want to deem unlovable, contemptible, if we can't thaw that, if we can't see their humanity and see their dignity,
So what's the path
I don't know
to
where
that?
we have hope.
What's the path to that? How do you, because I look at John Lewis as a man of such extraordinary grace that, you know, is it that that those who have injured, though, have to show a desire for redemption, and that in an equation where there is an injured party, if Black Americans, if people of color in this country had that olive branch extended, rather than saying, "Hey man, my family didn't own slaves. That was a long time ago. That never happened. How come you get 2 extra points on your college boards?" If that part of society came looking for restorative justice or redemption, I can't imagine that so many in the community wouldn't embrace that in a total way.
I wish I had a foul. I'm going to give you another broad brush foul.
No worries.
Okay.
5 yards. What are we dealing? Is this 5 yards, 15 yards? Am I being thrown out of the game?
I think it's a yellow card. We're going to do a soccer on this. Yellow card.
One more and I'm done.
We tend to take I think it's debilitating when you are trying to talk about individual behavior and then you stretch it to a whole bunch of people.
Right.
What can I do?
Right.
I don't want people to watch your show and feel.
Don't worry about that. They're not.
But as a guy who's literally been, I still remember in college, let's get together and talk about race. And you have this conversation, you know, you get the Black Student Union together with the Hillel and they,
right.
You know, whatever, and you leave and nobody changes their behavior. Right. It's all about mutually coming together and making yourself feel good, or feel better because you're pointing fingers at somebody else and not saying, what can I do as an individual? And every one of us shares responsibility. So I'm disappointed in your show if people watch it and aren't like that guy who changed my life, who's sitting on a couch and says, I can do something more, even if it's 1 hour pro bono work a week. Even me. You and I talked about food justice, and I live in a community surrounded by fast food joints, and nobody's having it their way. It's awful. And I confess to you, I was driving home one night. This is before I didn't know McDonald's French fries are cooked in like animal grease. And I just need some French fries. And I'm driven in Jersey. There's this detective who grew up in the projects, served in the military, came back and joined the police department. Great guy. We've now been in the car for like 16 years. We don't have to talk to each other. We can just look in the rearview mirror. He looks in the rearview mirror and he sees this look of shame, which means we're going to the McDonald's drive-thru. And we get in the drive-thru, and I am like, I get my 2 McDonald's French fries. I'm holding onto them tight, and we're starting to drive out, and there's a guy there digging in a dumpster, and he knows me well enough. We eyes meet. I roll down the window, I yell something at him. I realize it wasn't with the right tone, and I yell again, "You need some help?" And he turns around and goes, "I'm hungry. I'm Christian. Jesus, I don't know if you know this, said something about if you have 2 McDonald's French fries and your neighbor has none." Oh yeah, no,
yeah. I believe that's in the supersized Bible.
Yes,
King James supersized edition.
Yeah, the Sermon on the Mount.
That's right.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
And so I give him one of my French fries. I feel good about myself. I shared my bounty. And he says, "Do you have any socks?" And you've worked with people who are experiencing homelessness. I have as well. Like sometimes socks could be like worth their weight in gold. But I don't carry extra socks in my car. I look around and I say, "I'm sorry, sir. I don't." He looks disappointed. And then I look and I give Kevin the signal to drive. Let's get home. I got some French fries here. I want to unbuckle my belt and watch TV. And he doesn't drive. This guy puts the car in park, and I'm wondering what's going on. He reaches between the steering wheel, takes off the shoes, takes off the socks he's wearing, and hands them to the guy. The guy seems like he just got the greatest gift. I'm 2-3 blocks from my house. I got socks I don't wear at my house. And here's this guy that preaches love and all this stuff. But in the individual, this wasn't a congressional debate. This was one moment to touch another human being, and I didn't have the moral imagination to take off the damn socks. So we can externalize this as much as possible, but it all comes down to how we engage with the world. And if we are getting more and more of a box, talking to people who only agree with us, who pray like us, who look like us, we are part of the problem. If we only talk to fellow liberals, and we don't even want to go to family gatherings anymore because I don't want to talk to that uncle. We literally are not even engaging in conversation or learning the skills to have a conversation without turning into people shutting down.
Right.
Then we are a part of the problem.
But you're preaching the gospel to some extent here. And I got to tell you, if Jesus was alive today and he preached that gospel, the Twitter comments would be vicious. Jesus, you both sides, sir. What are you doing? First of all, thank you for sitting down with me, but also for not allowing the conversation to be rote. Because I think that's one of the most important things about these conversations is specificity and precision. And so your ability to be present within it and to be able to create those boundaries and definitions and reframings was really helpful for me.
Yeah.
And it did help me look at, I do have a tendency to generalize.
Right.
Some of it is the comics mind. Look, I work in a reductive business. If I didn't have, prejudices, I don't have an act.
But see, it was really instructive to me before we came in here.
Yeah.
That I was telling you the story about Inhofe.
Yes.
And, for the sake of the moment, this guy that you had made fun of.
He did bring a snowball down. He did bring a snowball down the floor of the Senate to talk about how could there be global warming. I have a snowball.
I understand.
I mean,
and I will tell you this.
You got to make fun of that.
I'm not. By the way, I used to come home. We didn't know each other then. As mayor of the city of Newark, I would hug you every time I see you, but I don't want you to be uncomfortable, because there were some nights I was so stressed out. I would hang out with my best friends, you, Ben, and Jerry, and you would be my Richard Pryor as to my father.
That's very kind of you to say.
And giving me outlets. So there's nothing wrong with that satire. I have been made fun of by people on the right for, hey, I've said some stupid things in my day that are easy to pull out.
As we all have.
Yeah, or to pull out of context and make me look like an idiot. It is fair game, and comedians have been doing that from the beginning of time. But there's something when we were having that conversation that was illustrative to me. Look, I love Inhofe.
As a guy.
As a human being.
Right.
He has said things about LGBTQ Americans. I could go through all the differences we have. But when I walked into his office, saw a picture of him and a black girl that challenged my implicit biases. I didn't think a right-wing Republican. Again, I had the wrong biases. And find out he adopts this girl out of a tough situation. That's not like a redeeming factor. I will fight him against all the things he's doing legislatively that are hurting communities that I care about.
Right.
But what I'm saying is I saw his humanity, and it created a friendship that I was able to get something passed to help homeless and foster kids, only because I had a basis for conversation with him over common ground. He is not my enemy. He may be on bills my adversary. There may be times where we are working against each other, but he is not my enemy. In fact, he is my hope. Because we are not ever going to get to a place where we're all alike, we all think alike, we all work alike, but can we create what we've done in that body before? Social Security, the Voting Rights Act. And I know a lot of these things are being rolled back now, or they're challenges, but they didn't happen because only one party necessarily agreed. They happened because people found common ground and advanced this nation. So I'm not a Pollyannish.
No, I understand.
I really am not. And I'm tired of having my heart broken. But as I told you before, If America isn't breaking your heart regularly, you don't love her enough.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or you're not paying enough attention.
We're not paying enough attention. And or like, look, I walk by street corners every day where there's shrines to dead kids. Mm. I have had to talk to parents whose children are permanently brain damaged because of lead. I've seen people in my community get evicted over $200 and have their children living on the streets. All of these things are evidence of our lack of love for each other and our lack of even being able to understand what people are going through. But that doesn't mean I surrender those principles. It means we need to double down on them.
Right. I feel weirdly better, but I do want to ask you, who is the most racist senator? You don't have to answer that.
I mean, could I go back in time?
No. Let's go. We don't go with Calhoun. I mean, let's face facts. It's funny when I went to Senator Scott's office and I was looking around, and it really is a shrine to, the children that he helps and the real issues that he cares about and all that. But out in the office area, the little office area, there is that. All the senators from South Carolina, and your eye does get drawn to like, oh right, John C. Calhoun. That's okay.
There's moments.
That's a rough one.
So I'm the fourth black person,
yeah,
popularly elected ever to the Senate. For me, it was Obama. Before Obama, it was Carol Moseley Braun. Before it was Edmund Brooke. That's the start of the popular.
What?
Yeah. So Tim is the fifth.
Really?
Yeah. So picture this: we are negotiating with Karen Bass, the policing a bill that we're God willing still will get done, and we're trying to find a room to negotiate in.
Right.
And we get assigned a room, and I'm walking into the room. I ask my staff, "What's this room's name?" And they go, "It's the Strom Thurmond room." And I stopped and wondered, what would Strom Thurmond think that these two black guys, United States senators, and this incredible woman from the House of Representatives, were sitting here negotiating how to deal with the lack of transparency and accountability and the things we need to do to improve that profession. I mean, so I'm reminded every day.
Right.
In fact, my mom, when I got here, my dad had died 6 days before I was elected to the Senate.
Boy.
Yeah. So, and I got a special election. I got sworn in of all the days.
Right.
I get sworn in on Halloween, and so my mom is grieving. I'm grieving. Like my dad's not seeing this. And again, who is my mom thing to take me to go see? Right before I go to the floor to be sworn in by Vice President Joe Biden, she takes me to see John Lewis.
Oh,
so we cross the Capitol.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I mean, tears. My mom, you walk into his office, it's a civil rights museum.
Yeah.
And except for he's in every picture.
Because he's a artifact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he won't let you get up. Like he's so humbled. He's like serving me like grits and eggs and whatever. And then he emotionally is looking at me who would not, I told you, he influenced even my coming into the town.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to tell me what it means to him to watch the 4th. And my mom, I know this has never happened ever before in American history. We leave his office and my mom is lecturing me all the way, like, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget the title doesn't make the man's got to make the title. As if she's like never going to see me again. I'm going off to like summer camp or something like that. And then I walk onto this floor for the first time ever.
Right.
So I never get into the symbolism of race in this country. That I think it's a wonderful sign maybe that we had a black president. We're going to have a black woman Supreme Court justice. To me, it's the communities that are evidence of the progress we make or don't make. But I can't walk onto that Senate floor to this day, from that day to this day, without some consciousness of knowing all the sacrifice and all the fight that got me there. And know in my heart that progress can be made and that we can get better.
So is the dream then, and I'll let you guys go because I know your office apparently is going to close soon.
Yeah.
As I'm watching the staff going, I'm going to miss Fabulous Fun Fridays.
Yes.
Is the dream then that an African American walks onto the Senate floor as a senator and doesn't think that gets to walk onto the floor and that's not at front of mind.
I'm tired of having to count, man.
Yeah.
I'm tired of having to say that this is the first or the second.
Yeah.
I'm really tired of that.
Right.
And it takes conscious effort to change. And I see this in the corporate world and the business world. But that's not my sign that's a sign.
Right, but not the sign. Your sign is,
how many kids are in poverty?
Yep.
How many people are we, and what kind of people are we filling our jails with? And I don't mean disproportionately.
And have we made this country the place where if you do work hard, you can make yourself anything? Is it fulfilling that part of the dream for kids and making it so that those kids don't have to go through extraordinary circumstances just to get through high school?
Yeah. And I know that the necessary condition precedent to that has to be an expansion of moral imagination and that more courageous empathy for one another. It is always
figuring out how to get that gentleman's socks.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.